Such memories of the Oakdale. If you grow up in Wallingford, if you had grown up in Wallingford like I did, and you were within bicycle distance of the Oakdale Theater, you would come down here in the summer evenings, because back in those days we were free range kids. You just go out on your bike and go do what you want to do. So we'd come down here, and there was the tent. So all of the theater was under a tent. And in the winter, the tent would be laid out here in the parking lot, probably where I'm standing, to dry or whatever. And you'd have to be careful not to ride your bicycle on it. It wasn't protected or anything. And in the summer, of course, would come down here, and you'd have Tom Jones performing. It's not unusual. Sorry. And lots of other acts. I saw Cream, here, and Led Zeppelin in 1968, I think it was. And eventually the tent was replaced with a dome, so you can still see the dome today. And then the dome still had canvas around the outside, and then eventually that was put walled in and turned into a theater that you could air condition. And then, of course, the Seagulls, Ben Siegel no longer owned it, didn't run it anymore. And of course, I was friends with some of the Siegel boys from school, and we would hang out at Rosewood, his house on Mansion Road, just close to the Oakdale. And that's where some of the performers like Liberace would go before or after the show, and you get to meet some celebrities. It was a wonderful time. Now, of course, Oakdale doesn't have the same name brand acts that it used to have, although from time to time there's some name brand stuff here. But performers now want way too much money, and it's difficult to book the name brand. But the touring shows that come through here are often spectacular. So I love the Oakdale. So the North Farms Reservoir is here on Barnes Road. The old Barnes Road used to be the only way to get across town. So if you wanted to get to I-91 or get to Durham or other parts of town, you'd go up Barnes Road. Lovely country road. There's still remnants of it today, so you can find Barnes Road paralleling Route 68. Of course, people lived on Barnes Road, so the road couldn't be completely closed. And today it's a beautiful place to come on a summer day like this and enjoy Barnes Road and the reservoir. Yeah, this too is part of Barnes Road. So for years there was a barrier located right about there, and that's the end of Barnes Road when Route 68 was open. And you used to cross the railroad tracks right here and go straight across, and that's where Stars was. I remember when the Courtyard arrived in Wallingford, and then some years later, across Route 68, some additional hotels were put in. the Fairfield, the Hilton. It seemed in the same era when McDonald's opened in Wallingford. Made us feel modern, like we arrived. Another haunt of mine was Mackenzie Reservoir. This is where, as a teenager, or even a preteen, I'd go fishing. I used to have a fishing license, I believe. I don't know. I think if you're under a certain age, you don't need a fishing license. But yeah, this is the place to go for fishing. There's some people. I should be quiet. There's some people right now fishing over there. Hope he catches something. Oh yeah, remember Gopian's Trailer Park? Seemed like every time it rains, Gopian's Trailer Park was underwater. Doesn't seem to flood as much as it used to, maybe ever since the dam broke um, and the Quinnipiac is lower. But my gosh, every time it rained, there'd be boats right here where I'm driving. It was all underwater. Well, there's a coffee shop there now, but many of you may remember not long ago, last year, a couple of years ago, that was the home of Captain C's, a seafood restaurant. An A-frame building, you could go in, but I remember it as Cos Cobar. That's who was the original tenant. They built the A-frame, and that's where you could go and get a Cos Cobar burger. And of course, across the street from Cos Cob was the Villa Capri. So if you didn't like your burger and you wanted to have Italian banquet food, you could come to the Villa Capri. Well, one of the most memorable parts of being in Wallingford was going to Moran Junior High School or Moran Middle School. And that was in 1966, 7, 8. And I can tell you a story about Moran, something that happened in those days. So the principal was a fellow by the name of Mr. Quinn. And it's an unfortunate name because Manfred Mann, I think, had just released a song in that, maybe in 68, I don't know, called The Mighty Quinn, you know, and you can imagine that the junior high school, you know, seventh, eighth graders had a field day teasing Mr. Quinn anytime you walked into the room, play that song or that tune. But one of the things that happened that stayed with me all these years was Mr. Quinn punished the kids by removing their privilege to buy ice cream and soda from the vending machine. I don't recall what the cause was. I think maybe some kids had left trash around the vending machines. I don't recall exactly what was the motivation for that. But what the kids did, and this is so cool. So what a learning experience. All the kids boycotted the cafeteria. So for the next 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks, nobody would buy a hot lunch. So you would go to the cafeteria. You could bring your food from home. Pack a lunch. That was fine. But nobody was allowed to buy a hot lunch. When I say allowed, peer pressure, from all the other kids in the school. So that was the boycott, and that went on for, I think, 2 weeks. It was a long boycott. And you would go to the cafeteria, or after school, you would see these bins of food, just barrels of uneaten peas and corn and carrots and pizza and pasta or whatever they were serving for lunch, because the cafeteria ladies were still making it, just nobody was eating it, not one. And if some kid attempted to, oh boy, they would be ostracized. So that went on for a couple of weeks, and suddenly Mr. Quinn went on the PA system and said, I think you've learned your lesson, and we're going to restore the vending machine access, so you can buy your ice cream bar for a quarter and a Coke or whatever out of the soda machine. So that lesson stayed with me all my life. And, some of the things you learn in junior high school or high school have nothing to do with what the teachers do. It's what the kids do. Another landmark was Times Microwave, later Times Fiber. Now the building is Amphenol, and I don't know, I guess Times Microwave is still there, but do you remember when there was a huge satellite dish right here? I think it's right where that tree is now. But that was a landmark. You'd come down Wilbur Cross, Route 15, and you'd look over and see that big satellite dish. I thought that was modern and cool when I was a kid. Yeah, old Yalesville people would remember the corner shop. It burned down in, I don't know, 69, 70, sometime around there. It was quite a fire. Attached to the corner shop, an old country store, was the toy store. Remember the toy store? The toy store was a 2-story building, old, full of toys. Great shopping for Christmas for the kids. The toy store has been replaced by a bar. Well, welcome to Simpson Court. So Simpson Court is used to be, or I guess still is, somewhat the center of Wallingford. Think of it as the Wallingford Center. A lot of activity here at Simpson Court. Now, there used to be a pharmacy right here. I think it was right here. I think. This was Simpson Pharmacy. And I think next to Simpson Pharmacy, there was a coffee shop. I don't know. Might have been right here. I don't recall exactly where it was. But the Barnes family, Mrs. Barnes, ran that little coffee shop. And they sold candy and coffee and sodas and so on. This would have been around 1967, 1968 time frame, as I recall. Today, Simpson Court is modernized. Gaetano's restaurant across the street is Archie Moore's. It's a wonderful place in the summer, year-round actually, and it's been fixed up. It's pretty nice. I mean, here in this alleyway, there's a beautiful mural that's been installed. And when I was in high school, actually throughout all of school, I would come down here because this was the Wallingford Library. It was this old historic mansion that today is it's still called the library. And here's the library. And this used to be the library, the only library in town. Today it's called the Library Bistro, the restaurant. When we revitalized the downtown Simpson Court area, we sold bricks, so you could buy a brick and put your name on it. And my name, my family name, is on the bricks here somewhere. Don't know exactly where anymore, but it's right around here. It was a nice idea, and I hope they continue that tradition. Kind of historic. There used to be a wishing well here, a classic wishing well. And when I was in junior high school, yeah, we would hang out here at Simpson Court. The old wishing well was here. Nicely, it's been replaced with a more modern reproduction of that wishing well. One of my favorite restaurants, Los Mariachis, but only old-time Wallingford residents will remember that this building was actually built for Kentucky Fried Chicken. Yeah, it used to be KFC. You could still get spicy chicken, but then after KFC left, I think it was a H&R Block for a while, and then an office building, and finally a Mexican restaurant came in, and then the current owners changed the name, and Los Mariachis, and it's great food. Welcome to Ives Road. This is where Unimax Switch was located. Unimax is the reason I'm in Wallingford. So my father was the director of personnel and various other capacities, director of manufacturing. He had a bunch of different jobs at Unimax, and Unimax was located right here. It later became a Sears hardware outlet, and now it's a storage facility. Ives Road was a sleepy little no traffic road for most of the time it was here. I recall that there was a sort of a dirt road path right over there that led to a printing shop. And yeah, Ives Road today is busy. Oh, I have recollections of going to Lyman Hall High School. And I was a terrible student, absolutely terrible student. I didn't enjoy high school at all. I was a terrible student, and I didn't learn how to learn until much later in life. But Lyman Hall High School was terrific. They sure tried to teach me. Some of my recollections is when I first got to Lyman Hall, I lived on the other side of town in Yalesville, and the only way to get here I don't know, I was 15, I think 14 years old, something like that. The only way to get here was to take the bus, and you'd have to assemble at a point not far from my house. You'd have to walk to the bus stop in rain and snow and suffer bullies at the bus stop, and then take the bus. And I remember driving all the way across town. It took I don't know, almost an hour to get to Lyman Hall from the other side of town. I was in the last graduating class where there was only one high school in Wallingford, Lyman Hall, and we were all together. The following year, they split when they built Sheehan High School. But you know, in the winter, I remember those school buses where you'd sit in the seat, and the windows of the bus would get all uh, frosted up from the the breath of all the students, and it was pretty bad. You could scratch the glass in order to remove some of the frost if you wanted to look out the window. And you would arrive here, and there was a weird metal rusted roof that covered the walkway where you'd get off the bus. And Lyman Hall was pretty cool. There was an auto shop. I don't know if they still have auto mechanics. I'm walking next to what was the agricultural center. There was a greenhouse here, as I recall. Right around here was a greenhouse. Now, of course, they've really embraced the agricultural stuff with a whole agricultural building that is now here. And in 1970 is when we had the tercentenary, the Wallingford tercentenary. And here at Fitzgerald Field, right down there, that was Fitzgerald Field. I think it's still called Fitzgerald Field. And we put on the spectacular. We repeated that with the Rogers Company taking care of the production in 1976. So, interesting memories of Wallingford and Lyman Hall High School. Now, I remember when this historic building was moved. It was jacked up, put on rollers, and moved back here. It used to be right against Christian Street. It was right over here. And when you drove down Christian Street, it would be right there next to you. So it was moved back, and it's actually in a better location. There's a nice open court here at Choate. And I have fond memories of Choate. Interesting relationship with Choate. So in 1968, 69, right around there, maybe 70, I don't know. Choate opened a radio station, a low power broadcast radio station in this building. And if you look on the roof, you can still see the radio antenna, the FM transmitter radio antenna up there. And the kids from the Wallingford local area were invited to put on a show. So it wasn't just the Choate kids that were doing the radio. We could do it if we went to the local high school. So I volunteered and put on a show here, and it was quite the thing. Dealing with the Choate kids, they called us the Townies. We called them the Choaties. And you know, the Choaties were famous for, at least with us, famous for being afraid of the master. So if we went outside and smoked a cigarette, he did something wrong. Oh no, watch out, the master might see you. Right? And we would laugh at that. But Choate, of course, is well known, famous worldwide. President John Kennedy went here. Lots of famous people went to Choate, and it's a beautiful campus. The controversy in Wallingford, of course, is Choate keeps buying up property, and because they're a nonprofit, they don't pay property tax. So I wish that Choate would contribute a little bit more to the town than just buying up the real estate.
In the early 1970s, Wallingford was in transition from an agricultural community to an industrial one. Barnes Industrial Park was opened to replace the Barnes apple orchards.
By 1976, we moved from Stamford to Wallingford and built this 156,000 square foot manufacturing facility. It was originally called Stelma, then it was changed to Data Products New England when Data Products bought the company. Worked here for 15 years. The road was still fresh. Route 68 had just been installed. I think the asphalt was still soft. Yeah, it was quite a young crowd and a really good time. Parker Place for years just was an abandoned factory, and a few years ago it was turned into a lovely apartment complex. And I also wanted to point out that Wallingford removed a lot of railroad crossings. One of them was right here, and I recall riding with my dad across the railroad tracks here, and he would stop a little store just on the other side in order to buy a pack of Pall Mall cigarettes. That's what he smoked back in the 60s. So here on Hope Hill Road, we have Sheehan High School. Well, Sheehan wasn't built until, I think, 1971. I remember seeing it being built in 1970, and I think the first class attended there in 72. I know that because 1971 was the last graduating class at Lyman Hall where the whole town was together. And they split us up, and the East kids now don't know the West kids, and so on. But this was just a field, and right about there, I don't know, maybe above where there was a hill up there, and there was a pond, and you could wade through the weeds and get up to the pond and do some fishing. There's an old farm pond. And today, here on Hope Hill Road, you have Sheehan High School right there. Moran, of course, is right over here. And just down the road on Hope Hill, that's where my friend Dennis lived, right over there. So it was very convenient when they started launching fireworks here. You go visit Dennis's house, and across from his house there is Lady of Fatima Church, and that's where they would have dances and social events. And one of the things I remember about the social events at the recreation building, I don't know what they call it, but there was this building there where they would put on plays and have dances. And I remember going to a dance there and having the nuns come over, separating us, because you want to hold the girl tight. And she would say, "Make room for the Holy Spirit. Make sure you make room for the Holy Spirit." Yeah, great memories. Well, this is my old neighborhood, Parker Farms Road. So we're coming up on the Watrous Farm. So where I am right now, over here, this was part of the barn, Mr. Watrous, and he called his wife Woman, the woman. Yeah, he was quite the character. So this was the Watrous house, and across the street, directly across the street, that's where the barn was. And there's a pond back there, and he had a cow, and the barn was full of hay, and kids would play in the barn and eventually kids playing in the barn with matches or something, and it burned down. So I lived right here across the street, and Parker Farms Road in those days was a country road, not a lot of traffic. Our dog, Cookie, would walk out on the road and sometimes would actually sleep, lay down in the road because, you go hours without seeing a car, back in those days. So we're coming up on 141 Parker Farms Road. That's where I grew up here in Wallingford. Now I got to tell you something. In those days, the rule was if you lived a mile or less from your school, you had to walk. A bus was quite a privilege. There were no buses that would come and get you. And so we had to walk about a mile. It was almost exactly 1 mile down Parker Farms Road, down the hill, and then back up the hill on Hope Hill to arrive at Moran Junior High School. Later, they changed the rules by the time I got to high school, and you could take the bus. But that was a different issue, right? Because then you'd go up here to the corner of Pequot, and that's where the bullies would be. And yeah, you learn how to get along. You learn how to deal with bullies, and it's all part of the life learning experience. Parker Farms Road, not like it used to be. This was all farm field. Now it's all residences, lovely houses, but man, my memory goes so far back.
Oh, Wallingford was such a great place to raise a family. And my daughter went to Pond Hill School.
Even as a kid, I thought it was pretty cool that Wallingford had its own generating plant. The Pierce generating plant was really a cool place, and on the hottest summer day would power up and was providing power to the town. I thought that was really something. I still do. Of course, I believe the generating plant was transferred, sold to, I don't know, some sort of energy consortium. I'm sure some of you know the details of that. Stanley Judd, Wallace Silversmith, and American Islet Specialty, International Silver, employed thousands of people. And early in the morning when a shift would start, some of them would be walking down Cherry Street, heading to Stanley Judd, walking past Boylston's Market. Remember Boylston's? That's where you'd buy a rubber mask for Halloween. They had a great selection of Halloween costumes. And for a brief while, across the street here was Cortland Cafe. But people would walk to work down Cherry Street, an ethnic neighborhood. There were a lot of Polish immigrants here, Hungarian, Puerto Rican, Cuban, Italian. People from all over the world would come to Wallingford, settle down, raise a family, and live the American dream. Well, International Silver was in Wallingford. This was the building for International Silver, as I recall. Later, it became Islet Specialty, I think. But yeah, it employed lots and lots of people. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of workers, probably hundreds. And they were from all over. I remember Spanish being spoken, Hungarian, Polish. And I would ask some of the workers, what do they do there? And they told me, oh, we were assembling lipstick cases for Revlon at one point. But I guess the Wallingford, the whole area was important for silversmithing and flatware, because you had Wallace and International here. And of course, Meriden was the silver city, and Wallingford participated in that too. Today, it's a warehouse, and it was decrepit for quite a while, for many years, and then it started to get fixed up again, and now it's a truck stop, warehouse, lots of semi trailers and trucks around, lots of coming and going. So, you know, everything old is new again.
Well, you know how old people sometimes refer to things with funny names? Yeah, I still call this Lums. Remember Lums? They were the ones who originally built this building. Of course, now across the street, you've got the quality restaurant, McDonald's. And for, I don't know, years and years, what is now a car wash, that used to be the fireplace store. And I swear, the people who ran the fireplace store were hoarders. I mean, you went in there and you could buy fireplace stuff, but my God, they had a barn that was just full of stuff, cool stuff. And yeah, the fireplace store, Lums, and now McDonald's.
I always thought it was pretty cool. We had a recording studio here in Wallingford, Trognossel Studios. And the Wildweeds, I believe, did their album recording out of the studio, which was kind of strange because who would put a recording studio so close to the railroad tracks?
Part of what made Wallingford so great was the diverse population from all over the world.
Hungarian, Polish, Italian, Puerto Rican, Cuban, lots of communities in Wallingford.
So Wallingford's been very good to me as an entrepreneur. So I started 3 different businesses here in Wallingford. The first was called Avidia Systems, and we ran that out of 135 North Plains Industrial Road, that highway. And that eventually got sold to a company in California called Paragain Technologies. Did very, very well. Then I started a company called V-Brick. We originally were at just above Peppercorn's restaurant. The office is up there. Remember Peppercorn's? And then moved to this building. So for a dozen years or so, this was the V-Brick headquarters. Employed for about 150 people at the peak. Well, the investors eventually decided they wanted to move it to Herndon, Virginia, and that's where they moved to. So I exited V-Brick, my company, came up with a name. That was very proud of that one. And then started a company called Discover Video and ran that until the current day where now it's looking for a new home. But Wallingford is a great place for an entrepreneur. When I was little, my father's company would rent Silversmith Park for the summer picnic. And we would have a Saturday in the park, and there was a softball field, a pavilion, would have hot dogs and hamburgers and all that kind of picnicky thing. It was great. Today, Silversmith Park is in ruin. It's used for storage, I guess for pallets, but the rest of the building in Wallace Park is multi-use, industrial, nice. Wallingford has a long history of producing apples. Of course, the Barnes apple orchard became Barnes Park, and Shookies, I think that's what it was called, or Shoes, on Pond Hill Road. This whole area was an apple orchard. Today it's a residential development, just like so many of the agricultural areas around Wallingford.
I just wanted to go visit the waterfall before the maintenance. So the spillway is going to be replaced soon. And this is the old classic spillway, the West Dayton Hill Pond dam, right, and waterfall. Spent a lot of time here with my dog, swimming, jumping in the water. It's gonna be nice if this pond gets restored to swimmable conditions. Looking forward to it.
That's it for my Wallingford video. You know, Wallingford's been around 355 years, and I'm happy I had the last 50 or 55 years to enjoy this wonderful town. Thanks for watching.